They said a woman could hide her heart, but her body would tell the truth anyway. Clara Vance, 28, schoolteacher. She was the kind of woman men's eyes followed before their minds caught up. She possessed a figure that was the stuff of legend in a small, hungry town, an hourglass shape some women would have called a weapon. A body men might swear was God's way of distracting a ranch hand from his work. Clara wanted neither the admiration nor the distraction, so she hid, not in shame, but in severe caution. Every morning, she slipped into loose, sensible gowns that swallowed her waist and fell straight past her hips. When she felt the eyes of the boys' fathers on her in the schoolyard, she'd lift her chin, pull her shoulders back, and arch just enough to make it look like she was only fixing her posture, not protecting her curves. She knew what the men said at the saloon on Saturday night. She knew what the women whispered after the Sunday service. Pretty girl, too pretty, no husband. In a place like Silver Ridge, beauty without a ring was an invitation for a lifetime of stories. What no one knew was that the person she was hiding from the most wasn't the town. It was Jesse McCrae. Jesse was the ranch foreman who rode in like he owned the dust. He'd dropped by the schoolhouse after a long day of breaking broncos, boots dusty, hat in hand, to sit on her porch and talk about every woman except her. He had never once looked at her the way a man looks when he wants to claim. And that was the cruel part. She had a body that could have called him in from the road, but she dared not let it speak. The one-room schoolhouse in Silver Ridge sat at the edge of the Badlands, like a promise somebody had half kept. White clapboard walls, a bell tower that leaned slightly west, and windows that rattled when the wind picked up from the canyons. Clara stood at the front, erasing the last line of cursive from the board. Chalk dust floated in the late afternoon light. Outside, the sound of a horse's whinny signaled the end of another day. Behind her, Martha Bell was stacking primers. Martha was Clara's closest friend, a resilient widow at 32, who ran the boarding house and had a gaze that could strip a man of his pretenses. "You're going to wear a hole in that board if you keep scrubbing," Martha said, not looking up. "I like it clean." "You like it perfectly clean," Martha corrected, turning to lean against a student's desk. "Jesse's outside again." Clara's fingers stilled. She didn't turn around. "He stops by most days." "He stops by every day," Martha stressed, "and you pretend not to notice." Clara finally turned, her expression calm, though her heart was a furious drum in her chest. "There is nothing to notice." Martha raised one knowing eyebrow. Through the window, Clara could see him. Jesse McCrae, 29, foreman for the powerful O'Connell spread. Tall, whip-lean, with skin tanned by 1,000 sunrises and a lazy, oblivious grin. He was leaning against the schoolhouse fence, one boot propped on the lowest rail. His horse, a weary roan, stood tied nearby. Clara's chest tightened. She and Jesse had grown up trading insults and sharing secrets. Somewhere along the way, he'd become the kind of man who walked into a room and changed the air with the scent of leather and danger, and she'd become the woman who watched from the edges. "You should go talk to him," Martha said, gathering her worn shawl. "I talk to him all the time." "No, you listen to him. There's a difference." "He comes because you're safe," Martha said, her voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "You don't ask him for anything. You don't expect anything. And that, Clara, is why he will never see you." The words landed like stones in still water. Clara's hands stilled on the windowsill. The only sound was the creak of the floorboards as Martha crossed toward the door. "I'll see you at supper," Martha said, pausing on the threshold. "Don't let him stay too long. People in this town don't miss much." Clara nodded without turning. She waited until Martha's wagon rattled off toward Main Street. Only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding, smoothed her hands down her severe gray dress, and stepped outside. Jesse straightened when he saw her, pushing his hat back. "Afternoon, Miss Vance." She smiled, the kind of practiced, effortless smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. McCrae, finished the fence line early?" "By 3, he confirmed, falling into step beside her as she walked toward the well. "Figured I'd stop by before heading back to the bunkhouse. O'Connell's got us moving stock up near Devil's Pass. Should be rough riding." Clara drew a bucket of water and offered him the tin cup. He took it, his fingers brushing hers for a split second. She pulled back quickly, clasping her hands. "Devil's Pass is disputed territory," she noted, pouring her own cup. "I heard the Blackwood gang is running cattle through there." Jesse took a long drink, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. That's what O'Connell likes about it. High risk, high reward. Man's got big plans. Wants to triple the herd by spring. Said if any Blackwood boys get in the way, we're authorized to discourage them. He grinned, a lazy, unsettling flash of teeth. Sounds ambitious. Sounds like a gunfight waiting to happen. Sounds like a chance to make a name, and maybe a down payment on a place of my own, he corrected, leaning against the well post. O'Connell says there's a small ranch near Willow Creek going for a good price. Good grazing, close to water. Clara nodded, watching the cold tea slosh in her cup. You thinking of settling down someday, Jesse? When I find the right woman, he said, his voice casual. Someone respectable, someone who can handle the ranch life, but still hold her head up high in town. The words were an invisible blow. Respectable. She set the cup down carefully and turned toward the schoolhouse door. I should finish tidying up. Wait, Jesse said, straightening. I wanted to ask you something. She stopped, her heart suddenly pounding a frantic rhythm. Yes? He scratched the back of his neck, suddenly awkward and boyish. There's a dance at the community hall Saturday. The Porter family is celebrating their daughter's engagement. I was thinking of going, but... He hesitated, then plunged ahead. I was thinking of asking Delilah Crane. The name hit her with the force of a branding iron. Delilah Crane, 22, daughter of the town's wealthiest merchant, known for her yellow silk dresses and delicate sensibilities. Delilah wore ribbons in her hair and blushed on command. Everything Clara wasn't. Clara forced herself to nod. Delilah's a lovely girl. You think so? Jesse's face brightened with a cruel, oblivious relief. She's pretty, you know. Real pretty. The thing is, Clara, I don't know what to say to her. Every time I try to talk, she just stares at me like I'm speaking another language. Maybe she's nervous, Clara said, her voice steady even as her hands trembled behind her back. Some women get nervous around men they admire. Jesse's grin was devastating. You think she admires me? See, that's why I come to you. You always know the right thing to say. Clara smiled, fighting the urge to shatter. I will do my best. They stood there for a moment, the sun casting long, deceptive shadows. I should get back, Jesse said, tipping his hat. Thanks, Clara, really. Anytime, she echoed. He swung up onto his roan, settled into the saddle, and gave her a lazy salute. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow? She watched him ride off, the hoofbeats fading into the distance. Only then did she let the smile drop. She walked back into the silent schoolhouse, sank into her desk chair, and pressed her palms flat against the wood. Her body ached, not from work, but from the immense effort of holding still, of smiling when she wanted to scream. She opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a leather-bound journal. Inside were pages of letters, confessions she had written late at night. She picked up her pen. Dear Jesse, you came by again today, and I listened the way I always do while you talked about her. You asked me for the words to win Delilah's heart, and I gave them to you, because I always give you the words. But here is what I didn't say. I know exactly what you should say, because they are the words I've wanted to hear from you for years. I know how to make a woman fall in love with you because I have already fallen. You called me the smartest woman you knew. You said I understood people better than anyone. You were right. I understand you better than anyone. I know when you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you're scared of O'Connell's deals. I know the way your voice changes when you talk about your dream ranch. But you'll never know how I feel, will you? Because I'll never tell you. I'll keep listening. I'll keep advising. And I'll keep pretending it doesn't break my heart every single time you walk away. Yours in silence, Clara V. She set the pen down and locked the journal away. Clara's small cottage sat near the creek, tucked behind a row of cottonwood trees. It was Thursday evening. Clara sat at her desk, the lamp turned low. The ink was still wet on her latest unsent letter. You asked me today if I thought Delilah would say yes to the dance. I said yes because I know she will. Any woman with sense would say yes to you. But what I wanted to say was this. I would say yes before you even finished asking. I would say yes before you even thought to ask. A sharp knock at the door startled her. Clara, it's me! Martha's voice. Clara quickly closed the journal and shoved it shut. She unlocked the door. Martha stood on the porch, holding a covered dish. Brought you supper. Beef stew, made too much again, Martha said, stepping inside. Clara closed the door. You didn't have to. I know, but you won't eat unless someone makes you. Martha set the dish down. You were writing again, weren't you? Clara glanced at the desk. Just notes for tomorrow's lesson. Martha snorted, placing her hands on her hips. Don't lie to me, Clara Vance. You've been writing letters to that man for 2 years, and you haven't sent a single one. You write them because you need to say the words somewhere. Then say them to his face. I can't. Why not? Because he doesn't see me that way. The words came out in a desperate hiss. He's seen me at my worst, covered in mud, crying over a broken slate. I'm not mysterious to him. I'm just Clara, the girl who's always been there. Martha leaned back. And what's wrong with being the girl who's always been there? Nothing, Clara said quietly. Except that men don't fall in love with the girl who's always been there. They fall in love with the girl who just arrived. Martha stood, crossed to the desk, and pulled open the drawer before Clara could stop her. She pulled out the journal. Martha, don't! Martha ignored her, flipping it open to a random page. I wanted to be the one to hold your hand while the doctor stitched that cut on your forehead. You don't know that I wanted to hold your hand every day since. Clara stood, her face burning. Stop! Martha closed the journal and looked at her, her eyes serious. You write like a woman in love. These words, Clara, these words could make a man fall to his knees. Clara sank back into her chair, covering her face. What if I send them and he laughs? What if he stops coming by because it's too awkward? And what if you send them, Martha countered, her voice low and challenging, and he realizes he's been in love with you all along? The question hung heavy in the lamplight. The Saturday dance came and went. Jesse danced with Delilah twice. By Sunday, talk of McCrae and the merchant's daughter was everywhere. Clara spent the afternoon baking bread, kneading the dough with unnecessary force, pounding the unspoken anger against the counter. When Jesse appeared on her porch late that afternoon, hat in hand, looking dusty and tired, Clara's heart performed its familiar, traitorous leap. Afternoon, he called, stopping at the steps. Went by the schoolhouse. Figured I'd find you here. He settled into the rocking chair beside her. You heard about the dance? Martha mentioned it. It was good, he said, animated. Delilah wore blue. We danced twice. She's pretty enough she doesn't have to be a great conversationalist. The comment stung. Clara picked up her cold tea. You really think she's the right one? Jesse nodded slowly, looking out at the creek. Yeah, I think so. He turned to her, his tone lighter. So, what about you? You seeing anyone? The question caught her completely off guard. What? You're almost 30, Clara. No offense, but most women your age are married with kids. Don't you ever think about settling down? The casual cruelty took her breath away. I'm content as I am. You're too picky, he teased, rocking slowly. You're waiting for some perfect man who doesn't exist. You're smart, respectable. You own your own house. Any man would be lucky to have you, but you never give anyone a chance. Clara's fingers tightened in her lap. Maybe I'm just waiting for the right person. Well, don't wait too long, Jesse warned, his tone light. Pretty soon, all the good ones will be taken. Something inside Clara snapped, a hairline fracture. Actually, she heard herself say, her voice suddenly steady, I'm not waiting. I do have someone. Jesse stopped rocking. What? I have someone, she repeated, the lie flowing out with surprising ease. He's a foreman from out west. We've been courting for 6 months. 6 months? Jesse sat forward, shock overriding his usual composure. Why didn't you mention him? Because it's private. Not everything needs to be announced to the whole town. She could see the confusion and the flicker of something that looked almost like hurt in his eyes. It never came up? He asked slowly. Clara, I tell you everything. I told you about Delilah before I even talked to her, and you didn't think to mention you had a man? You never asked, Clara said, standing up to meet his gaze. Jesse ran a hand through his hair, genuinely bewildered. I thought we told each other everything. We did, Clara said, allowing the lie to expand between them, creating a necessary distance. But things change. He picked up his hat, turning it over in his hands. So, this foreman, he's serious about you? Yes, we've discussed marriage. Jesse looked like he'd been hit. He jammed his hat onto his head. Well, I guess congratulations are in order. He started toward the steps, then stopped and turned back. "Does he make you happy?" Clara looked at the man she loved and felt the full weight of the deception. "Yes," she said quietly. "He does." Jesse nodded, a defeated look settling on his face. "Good. That's good." He walked away, his steps heavy. Clara watched until he disappeared, then sank back into the chair, trembling. The cost of the lie was high, but for the first time, Jesse had looked at her with jealousy, not just friendship. The next 2 weeks were tense. Jesse still came by, but less often, and he was different. Quieter. He didn't ask about Delilah or for advice. He'd just stand there, watching her like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You're different," he said one afternoon. "Different how?" Clara asked, locking the schoolhouse door. "I don't know. You just are." "People change, Jesse." "Not you," he countered. "You've always been the same, steady, predictable." "Is that a compliment or an insult?" "A compliment. I meant it as a compliment." They started walking toward the road. "How's Delilah?" Clara asked, keeping her tone light. Jesse shrugged. "Fine. She's nice, but she's not... I don't know. She doesn't understand things the way you do." "What things?" "Anything," he said, frustrated. "I tried to tell her about the Blackwood threat up at Devil's Pass, and she just stared at me. And when I asked her opinion on O'Connell's new herd, she said she didn't know anything about cattle. Not everyone cares about cattle deals. You do." "I care because you care," Clara said before she could stop herself. Jesse looked at her, and for a moment, the atmosphere between them grew thick. "This foreman," he said abruptly, his jaw tight. "When are you going to introduce him to people? He's busy. He works long hours." "Too busy to ever come to town?" "He comes late, after you've gone back to the ranch." "Convenient," Jesse muttered. Clara stopped walking and turned to face him. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It's just strange, that's all. You've been courting a man for 6 months and no one's ever seen him. I just want to make sure he's treating you right." The protectiveness in his voice was that of a brother, not a suitor. "I can take care of myself." "I know you can," Jesse said, tipping his hat. "But that doesn't mean you should have to." He turned and walked away, the tension palpable in the air. 3 days later, on a late Wednesday morning, everything changed. Clara was at home, scrubbing her kitchen floor. She was wearing an old, simple cotton work dress. It was soft, with slightly shorter sleeves, and, crucially, she hadn't bothered with a corset. Her hair was down, tied back with a simple ribbon. The knock came unexpectedly. Assuming it was Martha, Clara stood up, brushed off her skirt, and pulled the door open. It was Jesse. He stood on her porch, saddlebag in hand, looking apologetic. "Sorry to bother you. I was heading into town and thought I'd drop off." He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes went wide. His mouth fell open slightly. He just stood there, staring at her like he had never seen her before. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. She had forgotten what she was wearing, forgotten that without the layers of severe, heavy fabric, her figure was suddenly and undeniably visible. The dress was modest, but it followed the line of her body, the curve of her waist, the swell of her hips, the soft lines of her shoulders. With her hair down, she looked less like a rigid schoolteacher and more like a woman of the West. "Jesse," she managed, her voice a breathy whisper. He blinked, his face flushing crimson. The heat of his gaze was a physical touch. It traveled over her face, her loose hair, down to her exposed neckline, and then lingered on the curves the soft cotton couldn't hide. For the first time in years, Jesse McCrae was looking at her the way she had always wanted, not as a friend, not as a safe listener, but as a woman. I should," Jesse stammered, his voice rough. "I should go." "You don't have to," Clara heard herself say, surprised by her own steady control. Jesse's eyes snapped back to hers, confusion and raw desire battling for dominance. "You look different." "It's just me," she said softly. "No," he said, his voice low and definite. "It's not." The air was thick, charged with the sudden, powerful magnetism that had been concealed for years. Clara could see the conflict in his eyes, the surprise, the recognition, and underneath it all, a powerful, pure want. "I'll see you later," Jesse said quickly, and then he was gone, striding down the path so fast he almost stumbled. Clara closed the door slowly, leaning against it, trembling. He had seen her, really seen her. And whatever had shifted between them in that moment, she knew, could not be undone. That night, Clara sat at her desk and wrote a letter. Not a lie, not a plea, but the truth she'd always hidden. Dear Jesse, you came by today and you looked at me like you'd never seen me before. Maybe you hadn't. Maybe I've been hiding so long, I forgot what it felt like to be seen. I've spent years trying to be the woman you could respect and trust, the woman who would never ask for more than you were willing to give. But I'm tired, Jesse. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending that I don't want you to look at me the way you looked at me. Today, I want you to see me, not as your friend, not as the woman who listens to your troubles, but as the woman I am, the woman I've always been. Yours, Clara. She folded the letter, but this time she didn't tuck it away. She left it on her kitchen table, a challenge to herself. The next morning, she found a note tucked under her door. Clara, I can't stop thinking about yesterday. I've known you my whole life, but I swear I've never seen you the way I saw you in that doorway. You looked, I don't even have words for it. Beautiful doesn't seem like enough. I don't know what this means, but I needed to tell you. Jesse. Clara read the note 3 times. He'd seen her, and he'd responded. Over the next 2 weeks, their exchange became a secret language. Clara would leave a note tucked into the fence post by the schoolhouse. Jesse would respond, leaving his notes under the well bucket or slipped into a book. Jesse, I remember the summer we were 15 and we snuck down to the creek after dark. You dared me to jump in. I pushed you in instead. You dragged me in after you, and we floated on our backs looking at the stars. I've thought about that night so many times. I wanted to tell you then that I'd follow you anywhere, even into cold water in the dark. I still would. See. His response came the next day. Clara, I remember. I also remember holding your hand that night to pull you to shore. I didn't want to let go. I should have told you then, but I was 15 and didn't know what I was feeling. I'm not 15 anymore, and I know what I'm feeling now. Clara's heart raced. She wrote back, the bravest note yet. Jesse, what are you feeling? C. His answer was delivered that evening, in person. He knocked on her door just after sunset. When she opened it, he was standing there, his hat in his hands, nervous and determined. Clara, he said, his voice a low rumble. She stepped back, inviting him in, and he closed the door behind him. The air was thick with their unspoken history. I got your note, he said. I know you meant it. Jesse took a step closer, then another. He was close enough now that she could smell the scent of leather and sun-warmed skin. I don't want to lose you, he said quietly. You won't, Clara whispered. How do you know? Because I've been yours for years, Jesse. I just never told you. His breath caught. He reached up slowly and tucked a strand of loose hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. I've been a fool, he whispered. Yes, she agreed, meeting his gaze. You have. What about the foreman? He asked, his eyes searching hers. Are you going to tell me the truth now? There is no foreman, she said quietly. Jesse's eyes widened. Then he laughed, a real, genuine laugh that shook his broad shoulders. You lied. You made him up just to make me jealous. Did it work? Clara challenged. Jesse pulled her closer. What do you think? I think, Clara murmured, tilting her head back. You should kiss me now. I think you're right. And he did. The kiss was clumsy at first, the awkwardness of a first truth spoken after years of lies. But then his hand tightened in her hair, and she grabbed the front of his shirt, and their secret history melted away into a shared, undeniable present. The harvest fair came 2 weeks later. The entire town of Silver Ridge was out. Clara, wearing a modest but fitted green dress, stood beside Jesse McCrae. The whispers followed them like shadows. Let them talk, Jesse said, taking her hand. But secrets in a small town never stayed buried for long. It happened near the general store, where the town's biggest gossip, Mrs. Sinclair, stood talking with a cluster of women. Martha grabbed Clara's arm, her face pale. Clara, we need to go, now. What is it? It's the letters. I think one got loose. It was too late. Mrs. Sinclair's voice rang out, loud and dripping with false sweetness. Well, well, it seems our dear schoolteacher has been keeping secrets. Clara turned slowly. Mrs. Sinclair was holding a piece of yellowed paper. It was one of the early desperate letters. "Give it back," Clara demanded, her voice shaking. "Oh, I don't think so, dear. This is far too interesting." Mrs. Sinclair unfolded the paper dramatically. "Let's see. Dear Jesse, I watched you today from my window, and I wondered what it would be like to touch your face. I write these words knowing you'll never read them, but I need to tell someone that I love you, even if that someone is only this paper." The square went deathly silent. Clara felt every eye on her. She wanted to run, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Yes," Clara said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "I wrote that. I wrote every word." The crowd stirred. Mrs. Sinclair looked shocked. "You admit it?" "Yes," Clara affirmed. "I've been in love with Jesse McCrae for years. I wrote those letters because I didn't have the courage to say the words to his face. And if that makes me shameless in your eyes, then so be it. I love him. I have always loved him. And I am not ashamed of that." The crowd remained silent, stunned into immobility. Then Jesse stepped forward. "She's not the only one," he declared, his voice carrying across the square. Every head snapped toward him. "I wrote back," Jesse continued, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. "Clara left me a letter, and I responded. And I kept responding because I realized something I should have known years ago. The woman I've been looking for has been right in front of me this whole time." He turned to Clara, his eyes shining with profound love. "I love you, Clara Vance. I've probably loved you since we were children and was too stupid to see it, but I see it now, and I don't care who knows it." A moment of silence, and then a loud burst of applause erupted. The crowd cheered, and Jesse pulled Clara into his arms and kissed her, right there in the middle of Silver Ridge. When they finally broke apart, Jesse was grinning. "So, about that wedding date." "I think," Clara laughed, tears in her eyes, "we should start planning it for the spring." 2 years later, Clara Henderson stood on the porch of their small ranch house near Willow Creek, the land Jesse had dreamed of. Their son, Russell, 18 months old, was stirring inside. Jesse came around the corner, carrying a bucket of fresh milk. "Morning," he said, kissing her cheek. "Morning. How are the cows?" "Fat and happy. We should have 6 calves by spring." Their herd had grown from 10 head to 25. "Russell's awake," Clara noted. Jesse smiled. "I'll get him." Life wasn't always easy. They weathered hard winters and dry summers. But through it all, they had each other. One evening after the children were asleep, Jesse found Clara in the kitchen, washing dishes. "Remember when you told me about the foreman from out west?" he asked, leaning against the door frame. Clara laughed. "I should have known," Jesse said, shaking his head. "You were too busy being jealous." "I was." He crossed to her, took the dish from her hands, and gently turned her to face him. "Best lie you ever told." Clara smiled up at him. "Best truth you ever spoke." He kissed her, and Clara leaned into him, grateful for every moment that had led them to this quiet, simple, true life.